We had a good week last week. We had a good week last week here at the Church of Elvis and Even More Latter-day Saints, which I'm the founder, pastor, spiritual advisor of. Now, we got a lot of new people because they witnessed the Ice Castle's bombshell on Michael 45 RPM's wildly successful stream about Steely Dan UHQR with Chad over at Analog Productions, aka Chatty Cakes. Now, we're not here to say I told you so. We're not here to spike the football. We're just glad that we had a small victory, a small part in that successful interview. Now, because we're going so fast, I've been getting asked this question again a lot. What the hell am I talking about when I say Chatty Cakes? Okay? In my family, we have a Chatty Cakes. We give nicknames. Okay? We do plays on words with our names. It's just what we do. We've done it forever. And I've given enough money to Chad at this point in my life that he's family. So he gets Chatty Cakes. And Chatty Cakes comes from patty cakes. Okay, the nursery rhyme. It's just for fun. Okay? And we talk about his products a lot. There's not many people who do what he does as well as he does. And we talk about his products so much. So he feels like a part of the discussion. So he gets a nickname. He doesn't have a choice. But we like what he does. So that's what that is. Now, I'm here to take advantage of a situation. I'm not going to lie. I'm here to talk about John Coltrane's Blue Train and what it means to me, I think, on two levels. But I'm using the time when they announced this Tone Poet, the mono and the complete masters in stereo. I was really excited because I've always wanted to talk about this video. I'm going to try and make it as positive as possible, particularly the end. But I've been watching, I'm not doing a review. I didn't buy them. I've been enjoying all y'all's videos though, your reviews. And I'm so happy how many people like the stereo. Because some people that are pretty hardcore mono have been really liking the stereo. And I've been waiting for that review. I've been sitting on it. And I'm encouraged. If I go to buy it after this video, it's probably gone. I don't know if it's still available. But I've been enjoying your reviews. Now, I have 2 copies. Both are mono. I've always had pretty small music rooms, so the mono works in here. This is a Music Matters, not the fancy vinyl one, but the regular one, and I have an older copy that's also mono. Now, if you're a Music Matters purist, you would be pretty disgusted if you saw this. I think 1, 2, 3 corners are pretty dinged. If you could see this, the cover is scraped. This has been around. It's been lent out a lot. And what happens is people come over to the compound and they see how many freaking jazz records I have and they think, oh, I got to try some jazz, or they got a new system or new speakers, I'm going to try some jazz. And like 99% of the time they pick this record. And it makes me happy. I'm just not too precious with it because I know they're going to love it. But the reason they pick it is not because they know what it sounds like. It's because the iconic cover. Okay, it's one of the most famous covers of all time. And as you know, Blue Note had a run on covers that is probably the most influential in history, the graphic design in music. From Joe Jackson to Minor Threat, so many people have been influenced by the Blue Note covers. And it's great. But the vinyl's fine. It's pretty beat up. But I grew up in a family where the old man thinks that jazz, he still thinks this, that jazz is probably the greatest American art form ever invented in our borders. And he might have a point. He really has a strong argument. But on the family system, which is his system, we weren't allowed to play rock and roll. He thinks rock and roll is silly. And we played jazz and R&B. Those are the rules. And whether through osmosis or tidbits or little lectures, even when I was pretending not to pay attention, I took in a lot of information on jazz. So when I got my first system, I started building my music. I didn't have a lot of it, so I was bringing in my dad's stuff. And I learned a lot. We didn't have the internet. And through family, my father and other family members that are huge into jazz, I would just read this, or they would tell me stuff. But I really wanted to learn on my own. And you may or may not believe this, but as a teenager, I went pretty hard. I went 100% on things. I didn't have breaks. When I got my mindset on something, and sometimes multiple things, I had ambition and I went hard. And I didn't know the concept of easing back, okay? So sometimes I hit walls pretty hard. But this album, even with all the music after 57, 58, this stuck with me as a teenager because it fit my mood. It fit my energy. And there's reasons why. But it really, really felt the energy and the swagger and the cockiness that a lot of the rock and roll I was listening to at the time. It felt fresh compared to so many of the records I was bringing back to my room. Now, as you know, jazz in the 60s, late 50s, it moved at lightning speed. In no time, they're doing modal. And my dad is a huge modal jazz fan. But as a teenager, when I would listen to these records like this, it didn't sit with me. I didn't understand sophistication. It didn't fit the energy and the time and the moment I was in, like Blue Train did. And Blue Train did. And a lot of it, I think, obviously has to do with people like Lee Morgan, being 19 years old. Thank God John Coltrane picked Lee Morgan to be on that session. You can make the case he pushes it and goes sideways on a few tracks, but on Local Motion, the way he bounces off Curtis Fuller's last note, and Curtis Fuller works sometimes in a tight note range. The way Lee Morgan bounced off Fuller's final note, there is nothing in my fucking life that I will do as cool as that next 10, 15 seconds he goes into a solo. Nothing. I will do nothing that freaking cool, ever. And that's fine, because I got the album. I can listen to it. I think Lee Morgan's youth and swagger spoke to me. I didn't know how iconic this album was. I didn't know how iconic the photo was at the time. It's not even my dad's favorite Coltrane album. And Curtis Fuller is the bounce. He's the wind. He's the pace. I know drummers and bass players are too. But Fuller does this thing where he works in these ranges that it just keeps things going. And the harmonizing on this album, I know Coltrane didn't do that a lot later, but at that time, it's fantastic. It's beautiful. I'm Old Fashioned that's the best version of that ballad ever done. I don't do a lot of rankings on this channel. That's not what I do. He never made an album on Prestige as good as this album, as Blue Train. Later on, he probably did. But it's hard to compare. One of the things why I don't do that with jazz is because because jazz moves so fast, you're comparing apples to oranges sometimes just in 3 years, just in 2 years even. When I started getting into the early internet with boards and even early social media, I jumped into a lot of the jazz, early jazz boards, early jazz community, for lack of a better word. And there's something about jazz I don't understand, where there's an elitism with the fans that can make you feel like shit fast if you come in there, okay? And you're new to jazz and you're say like, yeah, Blue Train's my favorite Coltrane album. And they'll drag you down and say it's not even a top 8 album. It's not even a top 10 album from Coltrane, yada, yada, yada. And these people look from this, especially back then, they looked for some convexity, some orientation with the intellectualism that will match their brain. And why don't you understand ascension when you're new to jazz? You're gonna be overwhelmed. Now that music does have more an intellectual bent. It has more of something to chase and learn about. But it doesn't change how good Blue Train was. And here's an open secret. John Coltrane loved Blue Train. He loved those players. Kenny Drew, especially at speeds, to have the touch he does, to have that blues swagger he does, and the elegance that Drew has on piano, it's just remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. And everyone's good in that group. Everyone is a mountaintop musician. And he loved that record. But it was something that it really bothered me when new people were coming into the social media and coming in to boards, that they just got dragged hard because they liked Kinda Blue, because they liked Blue Train. They're good records. And if that's the only jazz you have, that's the only jazz you have. But I think we're getting past that now. I think we're so used to social media, and there's a point where we're so used to it now that things just kind of roll off our back when people are just assholes. And that's great. Maybe it took a while, but I think it's great that the interaction and the way you can interact with people right now, you can kind of choose to it, and you can get better and better and zero in on that. So I just want to say, I love this record. It really bothers me when people were dragged for liking it as their favorite because maybe they didn't have the global view on jazz that a lot of people do. In reality, only a few people do. But thank you for watching this. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited this is out for people to get it in such a great form. And it's probably going to be one of the greatest selling records of this year. Think about that. A jazz record from 1959 will probably be one of the top selling records of the year. And that just warms my heart. Take care.